Welcome back to another episode of Empathic Chronicles. I'm Tiffany Elise, your host, and today we're going to be talking about something that I know many of us can relate to, and that is new beginnings. Whether it's stepping into a new chapter in your career, starting a personal transformation, or navigating life changes. New beginnings can be exciting, but they can also bring challenges. And today we're going to talk about how to embrace those transitions with empathy, self-love, and grace. So I just want to get into the fact that I've experienced a lot of change in my life, a lot of change that was probably not wanted. And then also change that I opted for. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into just the transitions that I've experienced in my life. I've experienced so many transitions throughout my life, and I empathize with you or someone who you can relate to, because I know how overwhelming it can feel to step into something completely new. In my career, each time that I've taken on a new role or project as a project manager, there's that blend of excitement and uncertainty. But over time, fortunately, I've realized that these new beginnings are actually where I've learned the most about myself. And I know that just saying that statement, it's easier said than done, because when you're in the moment of going through that change, you can't think of anything but the change that you're going through. And it can be super overwhelming and anxiety driven. And it's not always easy. I get it. I've been there. And I empathize so much with people that despite that feeling, despite that uncomfortableness, still go through the change and still overcome. Because once you're on the other side, especially if it's something that's changing in your life that is the best thing for you, that alone, overcoming that can make you feel so much better. It can bring you peace. It can just relax you. And I know for someone who's anxiety driven and has, major anxiety, and I suffer from depression, as someone with mental illness, I can completely relate. And I know that it's not always easy, sometimes the path ahead feels super unclear. But what I have discovered is that each new chapter brings growth. So, that saying, growth mindset, I think that term evolved just from the fact that, let's face it, life has been crazy and we've all had to adapt to change. One of my certifications is a change management practitioner, and I fell in love with that certification for my career just because I had been through so much change in my life that I felt that I could assimilate to that change agent type of mentality. And it's in those moments of change that we ultimately redefine who we are and where we're going. So grab your cafecito and take a seat, because we're going to get started. The challenges of change. Let's be honest. New beginnings aren't always easy. They can bring emotional challenges. Starting something new often comes with feelings of uncertainty and fear. I recently watched Inside Out 2, and I related to fear so much. Fear and anxiety. I'm actually thinking that my Halloween costume is going to be an Inside Out character, because it was so freaking cute. And I loved this second movie. But anyway, off topic, ADHD, squirrel. Whether it's a career shift or a personal transformation, the unknown can be super uncomfortable. Let me give you a story. So when I first had my son, My husband and I were kind of starting out. We didn't really have much to our name. Financially, we were going through a struggle. We hadn't gone to college yet and, earned our degrees. So, jobs were jobs, but jobs weren't really paying what we knew we were capable of achieving, right? So, we kind of let the stress of life and the desperation of having a child and, freaking out because you don't have money. And we went and we made like this life transition and we moved to another state where my in-laws live. And I just remember getting there and no lie, like I walked in to my in-laws' house because we were going to be staying there for some time before we found our own place. And I remember it like yesterday. I had my first son in my arms. We got to the house, typical Latin family, we spent most of the time saying hi, giving each other kisses, hugs, whatever. But I was super, super uncomfortable and very uneasy at that moment that I literally walked in. I remember it just like yesterday. I walked in, I asked like where my room was, or like where should we put our stuff down, I think is what I said. And I went to that room and I closed the door and I locked it. I didn't even let my husband come in. I went in there, I closed the door, I locked it. I was holding my son in my arms and I literally just started crying like a baby. Because number one, it was a completely new state. It was a completely new place. And there was no certainty that moving and crossing state lines and going somewhere completely new was going to ultimately rectify or improve our situation. So we were just going out, like people say, going out on a limb. That's kind of how we did it. And we were like, if we're going to take a risk, we're going to take it together. And I just remember like hiding myself in that room for like 20 minutes. And my husband was like knocking on the door and ultimately came in and talked to me and, was able to ground me again, and bring me back to reality on a softer note, but like I was super overwhelmed. And I was just scared because I didn't have a job. Here I am moving to someplace totally new. My in-laws, they do the best that they can, but like I wasn't trying to like hand over my child and be like, okay, you take care of him and I'm gonna go work. Like that was something that I told myself I would never do because, I related a lot to like being a parentified child and, raising my sister when she was little and, having that responsibility that I was like, I'll be damned if I'm going to give someone else like my child, and that responsibility, like that's not happening. So I just remember being super overwhelmed. I mean, ultimately everything was fine. But like my anxiety was so high. And I didn't know what to do and I freaked out. And so I felt like the only way to get through what I was going through was to recluse like a spider and just completely like isolate myself. There was another time where something similar like that happened, where we moved again. I don't know what it is, but we were like for a period in the beginning years of our family, we were like freaking nomads. I mean, we didn't know where we were going to end up. We didn't know what we wanted to do. We didn't know if we were doing the right thing. Here we are, two people, young and in love. And we wanted to start a family, but we did not have a strong financial foundation. And we did not have a strong economical foundation and, just career and education. We were kind of just doing the best we can and hustling through it, and so I'm very grateful that like we ultimately went to school and we got our degrees and, we started earning more money, but that came with a price. And I just feel like it's, sharing this with you, here's what I've learned. It's okay to feel unsure because, let's face it, change is challenging for everyone, but that's where empathy comes in. And Come on, guys. You know that I'm not gonna talk about empathy on Empathic Chronicles, but that's where empathy comes in. The key is to give yourself permission to feel whatever comes up. In that moment, I was freaking out. I didn't want anybody holding my kid. I didn't want anything from anybody. They were offering me things to drink, things to eat, and I was like, just leave me alone. I just want to be alone with my child and and my husband, but I didn't want to be selfish. He was like saying hi to his family and whatever. I was trying to be, just, this is not all about you right now, Tiffany, but like in that moment, I didn't know what to do, and so the key is to give yourself permission to feel. And so talking, how you always say, like, if I knew then what I knew now, I would have told myself, like, girl, just sit there and feel what you're feeling. Go through your feelings, go through your emotions. It's okay to have doubts. It's okay to have fear, but don't let those things like hold you back permanently. And that's kind of where depression comes in, and just constantly, being super hard on yourself. Instead, embrace those moments of uncertainty, because they're often where the most growth happens, believe it or not. You come out on the other side, and then you don't even realize that coming out on the other side, you're super, super strong, and you're much stronger than you were before. So I feel good that I shared that story with you guys, because it was one of the, they always say that like you remember trauma like it was yesterday. And that was one of the things that I remember most. So in talking about empathy, let's talk about loving yourself through the transitions, okay? Because oftentimes we can get so caught up in like, this isn't going right for me, and it's my fault that it's not going right for me because it's my problem, and let me just beat myself up about it, be really negative towards myself, not give myself any grace or any credit for anything that I've done to get to where I am today. That is a whole thing in itself. Okay. And another part of navigating new beginnings is practicing self-love. And I still struggle with this, okay? Because I recently did a post on my Instagram on Empathic Chronicles about imposter syndrome. And I know I've talked about it before on another episode. I think it's in season 1. But I learned so much about what it means to basically feel like you can't do it. And if you literally talk yourself into that, you'll believe that shit. Like that shit will get to your head. Like they say, like, get out of your head, sal de la cabeza, which I said during the last episode. But it's true. It is so freaking true. Like you can talk yourself into believing whatever shit you want to believe. Okay. And I've had to remind myself of this many times, especially during my career. When I took on new roles, there were moments where like I questioned myself, like, not only was I whether was I ready or was I capable? And it's so much easier to go down the negative path and so much harder to go down the positive path. I'm the type of person, if you know me, you know this very well. I beat myself up like really bad. Like I'm super hard on myself. Like if something happens at work and I feel like I could have done better, I beat myself up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you shouldn't have. And I've had to learn over time the importance of self-love and, navigating that. I've come to realize that being kind to yourself is crucial in these times of like transition or uncertainty, or just, things that are just not your typical norm, essentially. That's change, right? Change is facing things head on that are not typically your normal things that happens to you. And so how can you convince yourself of that if it's not something that you've ever known, right? And growing up, My mom, like, I could never do anything right. Everything pissed her off, everything bothered her. My mere existence just freaking, it would just piss her off so bad. Like, it was better if I wasn't around. So, or if I was just in my room all the time, doing like recording tapes at the 5 o'clock traffic jam on Power 96. Hey, but just like in my own little world, because I was always, it was just always like I could never do anything right. And so then growing up, I believed that. And it wasn't until I learned about self-love that I realized the importance of such. Self-love means giving yourself grace when things don't go perfectly, understanding that growth takes time. Oh my God. Listen, talk about time, okay? I did life, I know I say this, but I did life backwards. I got married, I had my beautiful children, and then I started to go to college. And I was that adult in your classroom, okay? Yeah, that was me. For things not to go perfectly, like, hello, I didn't have a degree. I didn't have shit. I was working and I was making the most that I could make without a degree. And it was right during that time where, like, an associate's degree, there was no more like, you can apply for this job with a high school diploma. It was like, no, you can apply for this job if you have at least an associate's. And then as time progressed, it was like, oh, you meet the minimum qualifications. You need a bachelor's degree. And like, I was like, all right, fuck, like, what am I going to do? Like, I have to be and get to the point where I feel like I am qualified. And so, that time that it took me to earn my degrees, was a growth. It was a growth spurt like you wouldn't believe. And I've always battled with like learning disabilities. And so going through that transition was 10 times harder. But believe it or not, since I was diagnosed and treated as an adult, when I started taking medication, oh my God, it was like a whole new world. I mean, talk about Little Mermaid here. I felt like a new person. I just felt like I could conquer anything. And each new beginning, believe it or not, is a chance to redefine yourself. Okay. And so when they say like, oh, you're just that is who you are and like you're never going to change. Yeah, there's parts of you that are never going to change because it's in your blood. But like you can redefine yourself. You can, come out on top and, see the other side, maybe a side that you've never seen before. And so it's important to be patient and be compassionate with yourself through that process. Again, easier said than done, but I'm telling you, because I've been there, I did that. I will get like a little personal. So when I was 18, I knew that I wanted to leave my mom's house. I was like, I'm not doing this shit anymore. I had already met my husband, but we were like dating, but we weren't like totally like 100%. We were kind of just like talking, and I went through a severe depression. Severe. My mom and I were always fighting. I was getting to the point where like, why am I doing this? I graduated high school. Leave me alone. Let me start my life. And it just wasn't a peaceful place at home. And so I really, really struggled with that. And I fell into the deepest depression. Now, mind you, having been a parentified child and having grown in an abusive household where, you couldn't do anything right, that's not what people saw on the outside. And I have met people that I talk to now, who I used to know, or, acquaintances that we've reacquainted. And they're like, I would never thought that you went through that because like, you were always lively and, you were always like everybody, I don't know. I think there were enough people that liked me that I had friends. And so that facade essentially is what, I held up. And I remember going into the deepest depression and I was suicidal. I said, I'm not going to do this shit anymore. Obviously, she doesn't want me around. My dad, he's always been like in and out of my life. But when I was little, he was out. It's almost like we missed that entire time. My parents would take turns, like weekends, alternating per whatever child support agreement they had. And I struggled a lot. And I was suicidal. And I was like, forget it. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for my mom. How am I going to be good enough for anybody? How am I going to achieve what I want to achieve? I have no support system. I'm just here doing this shit on my own. I don't know what I'm doing because I'm only freaking 18. And I was suicidal and I attempted to take my life. And I was unsuccessful, obviously. But I ended up in a hospital. And I was in that hospital for 3.5 days. And let me tell you, if you want to talk about growing through change, okay. I mean, going to this hospital, I was stripped of all of my belongings, especially my clothes, and everything was a hazard. I mean, I literally felt, and I don't know what this feels like because I've never been arrested, but I literally felt like I was being locked up. And I was stripped of all of my belongings, and it was just like, all right, this is what you're going to do. You're going to try to take your life. Okay, well, you're going to sit in this room and you're going to think about what you've done for like 3 days. Now, mind you, during those 3 days, other people there had visitors, like, I don't know, their mom and their dad. How about for 3.5 days, I had 0 visitors. Hell, every single time that I picked up the phone to call my mom, I remember one of the times that I called her, literally, it was like, she was just like, are you done? And I'm like, am I done? What do you, and crying because I was like overcoming and I had just went through a traumatic moment. And I was like, literally like trying to find myself within, 72 hours so that I can be released and go home. And she was like, are you done with your temper tantrum? Like, are you done throwing your temper tantrum? So yeah, to say that like going through that changed my life. I mean, after I came out of there, I was like, I'm not living with you anymore. I can't do this. And from then, my husband and I started living together, and then we got married, and then we had kids, and that has been my life. And so ultimately, I always tell my husband that he saved me, not like purposefully in the sense that like if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. I do consider myself a strong person, but in that moment, he saved me because in that moment, he saw that I was in danger. He saw that it wasn't good for me, and he wanted to be with me and I wanted to be with him. And I had to live with that because I guess like if you attempt suicide, it goes like on your record for like a short period of time or something like that. And so any time that because I obviously started therapy, I've always been in and out of therapy most of my life, and seeing a psychiatrist and all of that, because mental illness runs in my family profoundly. But one thing that I've always, this was a period of change, right? There's a huge traumatic moment and a period of change. And I say, my husband was my support system. And one thing I've always found helpful during times of change is having a support system. Whether it's friends, family, colleagues, having people around who encourage and uplift you makes a huge difference. This is unedited, okay? Raw material. I've been so fortunate to have colleagues and leaders in my life who've supported me in my career, especially where I'm at now. I have kind of, as a unique career story. I went and worked for, some pretty large companies. But there was just one company that like I worked for and I left because we moved out of state. But I always told myself, if I ever come back here, that's where I'm going to work. And I don't care how long it takes me to get that job. I'm going to get it. And I did. And that's where I'm at today. So these changes, they've helped me push through the toughest moments of my life and grow into each new role. And I couldn't have done that without my support system, without mentors, because, I didn't have my family to rely on. So I relied a lot on people like mentors, leaders who I worked with and or for, friends, freaking neighbors, just people that I've always been an extrovert, so I'm grateful that I've always been able to talk and meet and socialize and have a new friend within 5 minutes. But I don't think that I would be here where I was today without community. And that's the power of community. okay? Surrounding yourself with people who understand your journey, who can offer advice or simply listen, that's invaluable. Because for me, it was like, what am I going to do? Hey, my name is Tiffany. So I tried to commit suicide and that changed my life. Like, no, you're not going to say that. So it's like, you have to get to a point where you're comfortable with your support system to then be vulnerable, to then like humilde, to have humility, to be open and say, you know what, this is me at my rawest and I'm going to overcome. But at the end of the day, we're not meant to go through transitions alone. And having that support can make all the difference. So how do we navigate new beginnings? With confidence and empathy. Here are a few tips that have helped me along the way. First, I want you to embrace the feelings that come with change, okay? It's okay to feel excited, nervous, or even scared, but you need to acknowledge those emotions. But don't let them stop you from moving forward. Don't get caught up in the fear. Don't get caught up in the anxiety. Don't let it stop you. Keep moving forward. Second, I want you to set small and manageable goals. Look it up, SMART goals, okay? They have to be measurable, okay? So set small, manageable goals that are measurable. And whether it's in your career or your personal life, breaking things down into smaller steps makes the process feel less overwhelming, okay? So celebrate each step, no matter how small. Progress is still winning. Practice makes progress. Practice does not make perfect, at least in my eyes, because there's no such thing. Okay. And it's when we go through things that are not perfect, that have ugly sides to them, that we ultimately come out on the other side because we learn and we grow through strength. Finally, lean on your community. I can't talk about it enough. Okay. Whether it's friends, mentors, people that you work with, people that you used to work with, don't be afraid to ask for help or support. Okay. Having a strong support system can help you navigate the uncertainty of new beginnings. I just want you to not feel like you can't talk to someone. And as the host of this podcast, I am telling you that if you need someone to talk to, I am your girl. I can be there for you. Okay. I can walk through that line of fire with you. Okay. And so I want you to reach out to me on Instagram at Empathic Chronicles and let's talk about it. Okay. Because nobody should go through life alone. Especially nobody should go through difficult times in their life alone. So as we close out today's episode, I want to remind you that new beginnings are a powerful opportunity to redefine your path. Just because it's new or just because you're trying it for the 80 millionth time doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. Okay. Each opportunity has a powerful opportunity to redefine your path. So they're not without challenges, but each step forward is a chance to grow. Embrace the uncertainty, be kind to yourself, and lean on those around you for support. Thank you for tuning in to Empathic Chronicles. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode, so feel free to connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn. And until next time, let's keep growing together. Bye.